Today, let's journey together into the heart of ancient South India to explore Bhakti, what's known as the path of pure devotion. It's this incredibly powerful spiritual tradition that's really rooted in love, in song, and in surrender. Think of this as our starting point, an introduction to this path and the amazing souls who walked it, and we'll be diving a lot deeper into their stories very soon. All right, let's get into it. This quote just beautifully sets the stage. Just imagine for a moment a world where music isn't about performance, it's a spiritual language. It's your direct line to the divine. That is the world of bhakti we're stepping into, where every single note is a prayer. It's really the perfect way to begin. So this brings us to the most basic question, right? We've heard this phrase, path of devotion, but what does that actually mean? What does this spiritual journey really look like?
Well, the answer starts with this term, Bhakti Marga. It's Sanskrit. Bhakti simply means love or devotion, and Marga means path. So, the path of devotion. In Hindu philosophy, it's seen as one of the great ways to liberation, right alongside the path of knowledge or the path of action. But here, the entire focus, the whole point, is to build a deeply personal, loving relationship with the divine.
And what I love about this is how it makes the idea of devotion so real. It's not just some abstract feeling you're supposed to have. It's a series of actual practices. It's about listening, it's about singing, it's about remembering, and then ultimately it's about surrendering. These are the things you do that turn a feeling of love into a real lived spiritual path. Okay, so let's go to ancient South India, because this is where the path just burst into life through two incredible parallel movements. I want you to think of them like two great rivers of devotion, flowing from totally different places, but both ending up in the exact same vast ocean of divine union.
Our first stream is represented by this number, 63. This is for the Nayanars. They were 63 poet saints living around the 6th to 8th centuries, and their ecstatic love for Lord Shiva just poured out of them as incredible poetry and song.
And the second stream, that's represented by the number 12. These are the Alvars. The word alvar itself means one who is immersed, which is just perfect because it describes exactly who they were, people completely submerged in this all-consuming love for Lord Vishnu. And here you can see the two traditions side by side. The Nayanars, devoted to Shiva, the Alvars, devoted to Vishnu. But here's what made their movement so revolutionary. This path was open to everyone. It didn't matter what your background was. It was all about your personal, passionate experience, not about rigid rituals. It was like they created a spiritual democracy of the heart. Now, every great movement needs a soundtrack, right? And for the Bhakti path, music wasn't just some background noise. It was the main event. It was the very vehicle of expression. The sound was the devotion. And this music often took the form of kirtan. It has roots in really ancient traditions, but kirtan is basically the practice of glorifying the divine through song. This whole community chanting thing, often in a call and response, became this incredibly powerful, unifying force that just helped spread the message of bhakti all across India. Fast forward hundreds of years, and this river of devotional music gets channeled and perfected by these three masters, the Carnatic Trinity. And each of them brought something totally unique to the table. You had Tyagaraja, driven by this really intimate, emotional devotion to Lord Rama. Then there was Muthuswami Dikshitar, who brought this deep intellect and scholarly precision. And Shama Sastri, who was all about profound emotional intensity. Together, they literally shaped the sound of devotion for generations to come. So we've seen the outward expressions of bhakti, the poetry and the music. But what about the inner experience? What's going on inside? Well, the philosophical core of this entire path can be boiled down to one single powerful concept, the art of complete surrender. And that concept is called Sharanagati, or self-surrender. Now, what's so important to get here is that this isn't just one step on the path. No, it's seen as both the journey and the destination. It's the conscious choice to let your ego, that sense of I and mine, just dissolve into the vastness of the divine. To really get what this means, there's this beautiful analogy from the great Saint Sri Ramakrishna. He said, imagine a little doll made of salt, and this salt doll decides to go on a great quest to measure the depth of the ocean. So, the doll, being made of salt, bravely steps into the water. But the second it enters the ocean, something amazing happens. It starts to dissolve. Its form just begins to disappear into the very thing it was trying to measure.
And in the end, of course, there's no doll left to come back and report what it found. It is completely melted away and become one with the ocean itself. And that is Sharanagati. The individual self, the ego, just dissolves completely into that infinite divine reality. There's no separation anymore. So, as we've journeyed from poetry to music to philosophy, we've bumped into some truly monumental figures. And they're not just names in a history book. They are landmarks, like giant guiding lights on this timeless path of devotion. We've briefly touched on the 63 Nayanars and the 12 Alvars, whose songs of love for God literally shaped the spiritual landscape of South India. We've heard about the Carnatic Trinity, who gave that love a classical, formal voice. And we've seen, through Sri Ramakrishna's wisdom, the deep philosophy behind it all. Each one of these represents a huge foundational chapter in the story of Bhakti, and they're stories we are absolutely going to explore more deeply in future explainers.
And that brings our introduction to the path of Bhakti to a close. We've seen it's a journey of love, one that's expressed through poetry and song, and ultimately through surrender. And all of this leaves us with just one final thought to reflect on. If devotion is a journey, where does the path begin for you? Thanks for joining us.